and welcome, I'm Sara Davies, and this tutorial is all about adult colouring, but colouring and infusing glitter into your colouring. And it really is a fantastic and very rewarding technique. We're going to be working with a lot of the Colorista pads and the Spectrum Sparkle Pens in this tutorial. And I'm going to be talking you through some of the basic colouring techniques. We're going to be looking at how to blend with these, what sort of mediums they work on the best, the different effects that you'll get on different mediums, blending with water, blending with sparkle, increasing the intensity of your sparkle. So lots of little hints and tips along the way on how to get a fantastic result if you're wanting to colour with glitter. Now, this is part of a tutorial course that we're doing. So if you're just joining us, this is actually lesson 5 of an 8-part course on advanced adult colouring techniques. So if this is the first tutorial that you've watched, you can actually go back and retrospectively sign up for the course. And you just need to follow the link that we've got on the screen here. And if you sign up for the course, it'll take you back and you can go back and watch the video tutorials from the previous lessons. We've also got a suite of downloadable ebooks that you can follow along. So some of the more advanced classes that we look at have a lot of supporting material that you can either print out or just read straight from your computer. And then we also have a lot of free downloads. So a lot of the tutorials I'm going to work on here are all using the free downloads we get, and you'll see I've printed them onto different colouring mediums, whether we're working onto watercolour cardstock, or I've even done one later in the tutorial colouring onto vellum. So I do encourage you to go and sign up for the course. It's completely free and you can get all of those free mediums. Now, just a few little tips and tricks before you get started. I'm going to be doing all of my basic colouring into just a regular adult colouring book. And what you'll find is, because the sparkle pens are water-based pens, you will get the best results if you work onto a better quality cardstock. And it's the same with anything, you kind of only get what you pay for. So you'll find that I'm working onto a lot of the Colorista pads that we're working with here. And the Colorista pads obviously have some of the special effects on. You don't necessarily need the special alcohol pen card. I'm going to be working onto a lot of the pencil colouring when I'm doing my basic colouring. But if you do want to start and blend with these, you must work onto a watercolour card. Now you can buy watercolour card adult colouring books, or a lot of the free printables we've supplied as part of this course, you could just be printing from the free printables onto a watercolour cardstock and getting these same fantastic results. So get yourself some printed elements, get your books ready, get a few of these pens out. If you want to learn more about the pens, we actually have a whole suite of video tutorials teaching you about the sparkle pens. If this is the first time you've used them, one of the things I would recommend is go and watch this video tutorial here that we've just put the link on the bottom for, because that will take you off to a tutorial on how to prime your pens. When these pens come, you'll see they actually come without the seal broken, and that's just so that when they come in transit to you they are fully protected, because the actual ink and the mica hasn't been allowed to make its way through to the tip. So you do need to learn how to prime your pens to get the best use out of them, and once you've primed them, you're ready to work on some of the techniques that I'm about to show you here. So to start with, I just wanted to show you the simplest way that you could colour with these pens. Now I'm actually working here onto one of our Colorista pads, and the Colorista pads, this is one of the ones that's got the special effect foil on. Now originally these pads were designed for pencil colouring, which is why you'll see they've got pencils on the pictures on the front, which is a good little tip actually, knowing what type of cardstock everything's been designed to work with. Now, it is a pencil colouring card, but that doesn't mean it won't work fantastically well with the watercolour markers. What you'll find is it's not a watercolour card, so it's not designed for these markers to blend on this cardstock, and we will look at that a little bit later in the tutorial. But in terms of colouring over it, these work absolutely beautifully. And you can see what I'm doing here is I'm actually colouring over one of the foiled butterfly pieces, and as I colour over these areas in pink, see I'm just going straight over the top of the foil, and when I first start colouring over top of the foil, you'll think that the pink is actually going to dye the foil, and it doesn't, because the foil is designed to resist. All of the foil in these Colorista pads are designed to resist whatever medium you colour over them with. So you can see as I colour, it's giving me that, instead of just having a harsh black line like you would have on a regular colouring book, you've got that lovely foil effect that's just going to catch the light. And as it dries, it will completely resist all of that watercolour colouring. So it really is nice and easy. Because these have got such a fine Japanese point brush nib, it's really easy to colour and get into all of the little nooks and crannies. So in the same way that we talked about using our Colorista pens that had the specialist fine nib on, these water-based markers are even better. Look at the fine little areas you can get into there. No going out the lines, no bleeding, because they have that precision tip to work with. And again, colouring over the foil is not a problem, whether it's a small area or here you'll see me colouring over a huge large area, and it will completely resist below that foil and give you that lovely effect. So I wanted you just to see some of the very basic colouring and how easily these pens lay down before we move on to learning some of the more advanced techniques with these, how to blend with these, whether it's onto the same type of cardstock, or I will start using some of that specialist watercolour card as well to show you the difference. To blending colours together, there are multiple different ways you can achieve the blend. I'm going to show you all these different ways using the same colour palette here. Now you always start by laying down your base of colour, and the first way that I'm going to show you is just using a regular paintbrush. So I'm taking that regular paintbrush, and the trick is dip it into your water, but you want to take off most of the excess water. And then you can see you can drag out that colour. It's always easier to add more water onto your brush, but if you flood the paper, you're going to start to damage the actual paper or just oversaturate it with too much water. So the less water you have, the more control you're going to have to work with. And what you're doing is you're diluting out and dragging out all of the colour. So let me show you that again. You're going to start off first of all, always by laying down your deep colour. So you're going to get that into the tip where you want the darkest part to be. And then you're going to dip your paintbrush into the water, take off the excess water. Now you'll see I keep doing it on the back of my hand, whether you want to do it on a kitchen towel or you do want to do it on the back of your hand onto a paper towel. It's going to give the same effect. I just find it easier working onto the back of my hand here. Now you can use a water brush if you want instead of a paintbrush. It will give exactly the same effect. I just feel like they flood a little bit too much. What I'm going to do here, instead of using a regular water brush, I'm going to use our clear sparkle pen, because the clear sparkle pen works in exactly the same way as a regular water brush. It's just, instead of just putting down water, it's putting down the water solution with the microfine glitter infused into it, which means you won't get any loss of glitter as we try and drag that out. Now, in the same way that I've done that with the clear glitter pen, make sure you do always clean this off, by the way. You don't want to get purple next time you're going to work on a different colour. We can do exactly the same technique using a different colour, lighter coloured glitter, one of the glitter pens. So here again, I've started with the same purple, and this time I'm just using a paler pink colour to do exactly the same as what we did when we used the clear one, and we're just using it to drag out that colour. And the added benefit of using this over using a different type of brush, like how we use the paintbrush, is you are just not going to lose any of that sparkle. So there I use the rose quartz, you see. Now if you look at all four of them together, you can then see the difference between using a regular paintbrush, where you can see you've had pure dilution of that glitter, so it's not as intense, the sparkle. Or when we've used either the clear glitter pen or the coloured glitter pen, you'll see we've got a lot more intense glitter going over the whole surface. Now if I show you that just on a piece of scrap paper here, this is taking the colour, and then when we've used the paintbrush, you see, all we're doing is diluting the intensity of that colour down. But not only are we diluting the intensity of the colour, the intensity of the glitter also dilutes, because we're moving it purely with water. Now if you do the same again, but this time use your glitter brush, you have the same dilution of colour this time. You're just going to maintain the intensity of the glitter. So if you like an all over glitter sparkle, my recommendation to you would be get some of the extra clear glitter brushes and just use them as your paintbrushes all the time, and then you'll have a nice sparkly finish. And then just of course the last technique that I showed you is where you take the first colour and you can blend from the first colour into the second colour. Now I've specifically chosen in this part of the tutorial to show you this with a very, very pale pink. It's got just the tiniest amount of colour in. So you can see it's not massively different to when we've done it with the clear brush, but you can see how it transitions through the purples into the paler pink then. And this is the basis that we're going to use to learn the blending techniques. So looking at how to blend, here I'm taking two colours, the pink garnet and the cosmos. What you need to do is always start and put your colour, the deepest colour first. You're always going to work from the deepest colour. And make sure it's nice and wet. You want plenty of colour laid down on there. Then we're going to drag, if you look, I'm dragging through the deeper colour into the white section. And what you'll find is you won't see where the deeper colour ends and the finer one starts. And that's the whole idea. Because we're working onto watercolour card here, you're getting that perfect transition of colour, and you essentially are just bleeding one through to the next. Now this is the clear one I've come in with now, and because you wouldn't think it was clear because it actually still looks pink, but that's because all we're doing here is moving the pink colour and then slightly diluting it as we're getting near the end. Now notice I keep bringing my hand in, taking off the excess pink. That's because I want to transition this out right to a perfectly clear colour. I'm just going to show you that a few times so you can start and learn the technique. Always starting with the deepest one, transitioning through the mid-range, and then the last thing you're going to do is come in with your clear brush. Now notice I keep going over the same area over and over again. That's because I want it to stay nice and wet, and you can see how wet it is when we're working with it here. These are water-based pens and we're working onto a watercolour card, so you'll have the longest amount of time to move the pigment around the paper. That is how you get the perfect blend. We don't want to transition from one into the other and see a hard line where it finishes. You want to be able to move that colour around the cardstock so that they blend seamlessly together. And we say blend, and essentially what they're doing is pooling together because it is a water-based medium. And because I've done all of this with the clear sparkle pen, we've never brought our water brush into this whatsoever. It means we will not lose any of the intensity of the sparkle when all of this dries. Now I'm going to do the same again, but start with some of the blues here. So again, just starting with your deepest shade, transitioning through the mid shade, And then I'm using exactly the same clear that I used before. This is why it's important to always rub them on the back of your hand so that you take off any of the previous colour. You can see we're just actually dragging out that blue. We're not actually going to perfectly clear here. We're staying in a lighter shade of blue. That's why the clear pens are so useful. If you're only going to invest in one set of pens, I would definitely recommend the clear pens, because you could use these pens to be working in conjunction with, for example, aqua-based markers as well. We have a range of aqua markers, and you could be laying down your first base colour with just a non-glitter based aqua marker, and then using the clear watercolour sparkle here to drag it out to have that all over subtle clear finish in the end. It's very easy to do once you've nailed down that technique, always transitioning from the deepest through the mid into the lightest shade. And look at the intense sparkle you get. That's because we've only used the pure sparkle colours. We haven't used the paintbrush, we've only used the pure sparkle brush, so we do not lose any intensity of sparkle. Now, we talked about the importance of watercolour card if you want to be able to blend your colours, and I wanted to be able to give you a practical application of this. Here what I'm doing is I'm using a little bit of colour and I'm dragging it out using just a wet paintbrush, but I'm doing this onto one of our foiled Colorista pads, which are actually specialist pencil paper. So because this isn't a watercolour paper, what's going to happen is this is a dye-based ink. It's going to start and soak into your cardstock very quickly, and it means you can't move it as easily. Now you can see I am getting some movement there, whether I do it with the paintbrush or you'll see now I'm going to do it using one of the water brushes. So whether you do the same colour or you transition into a different colour or into the clear, you can see I am getting a little bit of mixing of those colours. However, you can still see that line between where one colour finishes and the next one starts. And that's because what's happening is the dye is gripping into the paper and immediately soaking into that paper. So it's not as easy for you to move it around. Whereas when we worked on watercolour cardstock, it's not soaking in, it's sitting on the top of the cardstock so that you can easily move it around, whether you do it with a paintbrush or whether you do it with a water brush pen. Now I'm going to show you using those exact same colours again, this time onto watercolour card. Now look at that, even though I've laid the base colour down and it's had a few seconds to start and dry, when I come in with that mid-tone, you can't see where one finishes and the next one starts. You've got that perfect transition and blend of colour. And if I show you the two of these side by side, you'll see the difference I'm talking about. You can really see that on the watercolour card, you get that perfect blend and transition with no lines. And where we've used it onto the card, which was actually specifically designed for pencil colouring, you can see those faint lines. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use this type of cardstock for colouring with glitter pens, it's not designed for blending. So it still works brilliantly and takes the glitter pens, but if you want to blend with any watercolour medium, I would definitely recommend the watercolour card. However, this technique will work just as well if you want to work onto a vellum. Now this is one of the free papers that I've printed. This is actually one of our bookmark designs. So I've printed this onto a vellum finish now. Now the vellum finish is a completely different type of cardstock to what you've got when you're working with your watercolour, but for the purposes of this technique works in exactly the same way, because what's happening is the actual paint, I call it paint, the watercolour sparkle, is just sitting on top of the vellum, which means that as I come in with different colours, I can easily transition from a deep shade through a medium into, in this case, a very clear one, because it's going to pool on top of the vellum, it's not going to dry. So it does take a little bit longer for this to dry, so as you're working on it, I would recommend, again, I was just choosing something small like a bookmark here, so that I'm not working on a huge area at once, but you can see, as I'm coming in with the lighter blue now, over top of the deeper shades of blue, it's immediately letting me move that deeper blue and transition the deeper blue into the light one. And then it'll be the same again here with the clear sparkle. I can drag that mid shade of blue right out to the ends of these petals using the clear sparkle, because it's sitting on the top of the cardstock. It's, well, on the top of the vellum here. It's not actually bleeding in or soaking in like it was when we looked at the previous type of cardstock, the one with the foil on. and then you can just continue in the same way over the whole surface of this one. I think the vellum colouring is beautiful. It's a lovely technique. It's a little bit different. You don't see many colouring books with vellum in, but for the purposes of this course, if you have been downloading a lot of the free printables, there's nothing to stop you printing these onto different surfaces like vellum and getting that same technique. Now the vellum obviously works beautiful with the watercolour with the watercolour pens. If you wanted to try something like colouring onto acetate, it would work equally as well, but you would this time need to use your alcohol markers. And of course we had a tutorial on the alcohol markers in one of the previous lessons, which you can look back on. So I hope you found that useful. It's all about just having fantastic colouring products, but better still knowing how to get the most from them. Now remember, this actual course that you're watching here was one of the lessons of an 8-part course that we're doing, and if you haven't enrolled on the course, make sure you do go back and enrol up. But if you have enrolled, then hopefully you'll have been looking through the free downloadable ebooks, you'll be looking at some of the printables. A lot of the designs I've worked with in this tutorial are using the free printables, but better than that, remember that we have a Facebook support group. It's actually a Facebook event that's linked to this course, so if you want to go and chat with like-minded people, share your tips and tricks, share other ideas that you've had, show us your results, there's lots of experts on hand in there to help you. So here's the details on the screen of how to go and enrol, and that will take you then through to that Facebook group as well. Now, make sure you join us next week, where we're going to be building on a lot of the techniques that we've learnt in the previous lessons and starting to look at how to create background effects. So using all of the different colouring mediums that we've worked with, getting lovely background effects, so that if you're working on beautiful colouring books like this and you want to just elevate them to that next level, next week's definitely going to be for you. So I will see you soon for lesson 6 on colouring with backgrounds.